29 and ask that it be reported by number.
The clerk will report by number.
Senator from Virginia, Mr. Kaine, proposes amendment number 429.
I ask unanimous consent that there be 6 minutes equally divided prior to a vote on the amendment.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Madam President, this is an amendment dealing with the power of the NATO alliance. We have seen since the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine that NATO allows the democracies to link arms and stand courageously against an illegal invasion of Ukraine by the dictator Vladimir Putin.
The Senate will be in order.
Some had questioned the value of NATO, but NATO has demonstrated its power to protect democracy against this invasion since February of 2022. There had been an issue raised in the last few years about whether any president could unilaterally withdraw from NATO, which was approved by the Senate in a treaty. The Constitution of the United States indicates that the Senate must ratify treaties, but is silent about how to exit treaties. The United States Supreme Court in 1979 said that is a political question for the legislature and the executive to resolve. What this amendment would do would make plain that no one could withdraw from NATO, the United States from NATO, without either a two-thirds vote in the Senate or an act of Congress. We've received a green light for this in the Goldwater v. Carter decision in 1979. And I think of all the treaties that the U.S. has entered into right now at this moment, in the aftermath of this summit in Lithuania and during this war in Europe, this Congress should send a powerful message to our allies in NATO that we stand with this historic alliance. The administration supports this amendment. I would reserve the remainder of my time.
The senior senator from Mississippi.
For a few seconds in opposition to this amendment, it is absolutely unnecessary. I cannot think of any currently serving elected official of significance who's calling for suspending or withdrawing from NATO. If I didn't know better, I would think that this amendment might be aimed as a slap at former President Trump, but surely that is not the case. If it is, however, we should be reminded that the former president was concerned about some of NATO's members not meeting their obligations to spend 2% of GDP, but that he was fully committed to Article 5 of NATO. You will be pleased to know that this bill, NDAA, addresses the concern of the 2%. We adopted an amendment at markup sponsored by Senator Sullivan that would require the Secretary of Defense to prioritize NATO members who are meeting or exceeding the 2% GDP defense spending target when the DoD is making decisions on basing, training, and exercise. I yield the balance of my time.
Mr. President, how much time do I have remaining?
Is the senator opposed to the amendment?
Yes.
1 minute and 40 seconds remaining.
Could I have unanimous consent to have one additional minute?
Is there objection? Without objection, Senator from Kentucky is recognized.
It is unconstitutional for the legislature to change the Constitution. While the Constitution provides a role for both the President and the Senate when entering a treaty, it is silent regarding how to exit a treaty. When the question of treaty termination first arose in 1793, President Washington and his cabinet endorsed the view that the President's executive power included the ability to unilaterally terminate a treaty. Withdrawal from the treaty obligations permitted the U.S. to maintain neutrality in a war between France and Great Britain, and it was done unilaterally by President Washington. The power to enter treaties is found in Article 2, which vests the President with the executive power. Unlike a legislative body, the President can act with unity and dispatch, precisely the qualities needed to negotiate a treaty, so the founders grounded this authority in Article 2. Passing this amendment is tantamount to altering the Constitution because the amendment would authorize the Senate to infringe upon the executive powers of the President. The Senate has no voice when exiting a treaty. This would amend the Constitution and is unconstitutional, and that's a good thing. The founders wanted it to be difficult to commit the U.S. to international obligations and easy to get out. We should follow the Constitution and vote no on this amendment.
Mr. President, might I ask how much time I have remaining?
1 minute, 17 seconds.
On the constitutional argument, my colleagues, this very question came before the Supreme Court of the United States in 1979. President Carter terminated a Taiwan-related treaty and was sued by Senator Goldwater and others. The case went to the United States Supreme Court. The court said because the Constitution on exiting a treaty is silent, it is a political question that the legislature and executive can resolve for themselves. The Supreme Court refused to overturn Carter's action. That is a clear green light that if Congress, the legislative and executive branch agree that on this particular treaty, the silence does not dictate but can be the source of legislation, we would be able to undertake this action. Finally, I note this is widely bipartisan, and I thank Senator Rubio and many other Democratic and Republican colleagues who have co-sponsored this amendment to stand strong at this moment with NATO. With that, I yield.
Is left on this unnecessary and extraneous amendment.
1 minute and 11 seconds.
I urge a no vote for those reasons.
Question is on the amendment. Is there a sufficient second on the amendment? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered, but the senator will state his inquiry.
And this will be a 10-minute vote, and those senators who arrive after 10 minutes and a brief grace period will not be allowed to vote. Is that the position of the chair?
10-minute votes have been ordered.
I appreciate the clarity.
The clerk.
Ms. Baldwin.
The clerk will call the roll.